There comes a season when the strongest thing you can do is not to have the answer, but to admit you don't. You've spent decades being the one who knows, the one your children turned to, the one your co-workers relied on, the one who kept the household running. And now, quietly, something has shifted. You feel the pressure to still have all those answers, even when the questions have changed. You carry the weight of pride, of habit, of not wanting to seem lost. But what if letting that weight down was the most powerful move you could make? What if saying, "I don't know," was not a weakness, but a door? This may surprise you, but the moment you stop pretending to have it all figured out is the moment you actually start living. Think about the old version of you, the one who spent decades trying to have an answer ready for everything, the one who kept the calendar, planned the meals, made sure every detail was accounted for. You were good at that. You had to be. But now, imagine this. You're standing in your garden, late afternoon, the light slanting through the leaves. And instead of worrying about exactly how the soil will yield next spring, you just look at it. You don't need to know. You don't need to calculate the right fertilizer or predict the frost dates. Something about that feels strangely like relief. It's not giving up. It's trusting the soil knows what to do, even when you don't. That kind of not knowing is quiet strength. It's the opposite of defeat. It's a choice to release the grip, to let life be a little mysterious again. And in that space, something new can grow. You know who taught me that? A retired teacher I once sat with. For 30 years, she had the answer for every hand that went up in her classroom. She knew how to explain fractions, how to diagram a sentence, how to solve for the unknown. She had the answer. That was her job. That was her identity. Then one afternoon, her young granddaughter looked up from a dandelion she'd just blown apart and asked, "Where do the seeds go? How do they know where to land?" And for the first time in a long time, she didn't have the answer. She could have made one up, could have explained seed dispersal from a textbook. But she didn't. She just looked at that little face and said, "I don't know. Let's wonder together." And they did. They sat on the porch and watched the wind carry those tiny white parachutes into the neighbor's yard, over the fence, out of sight. No lesson plan, no correct answer. Just two people, one small and one seasoned, sharing a question. Here's what she told me later. Saying "I don't know" didn't make her less in that moment. It made her more present, more available, more human. She stopped being the expert and started being a companion. And her granddaughter felt it. She leaned in closer. That's what vulnerability does. It invites intimacy where authority only creates distance. You can try this with just one thing, one small worry. Tomorrow morning, with your coffee, pick whatever's circling in your mind, some concern about the future. And instead of wrestling with it, trying to solve it, just look at it and say, softly to yourself, "I don't know." That's all. Let it hang there. I don't know if I'll travel again, and that's okay. I don't know if this situation will work out, and that's okay. Notice how your shoulders relax just a little. The pressure to have it figured out. That's what's heavy, not the uncertainty itself. You're not giving up on anything. You're just setting down the weight of having to plan every step. You're making space. And in that space, something new can come. It doesn't need to arrive today. It just needs room to breathe. And that brings us to something even deeper. The loneliness of always needing to seem certain. You know that feeling, don't you? The quiet exhaustion of holding up a front, of nodding along when inside you're just as unsure as anyone. You walk through a quiet park, and you notice the trees. They don't announce their age. They don't stand taller or prouder to prove they've been there the longest. They just are. Their strength is in being, not in performing. So what if you let yourself off the hook too? What if the dignity isn't in having all the answers, but in not needing to prove that you do? There's a deep self-worth in that, a worth that doesn't depend on being productive or certain. You are allowed to simply exist, to be present, without having to justify your presence. That's not weakness. That's a quiet kind of strength that no one can take from you. And that kind of strength changes everything. Because here's what happens when you finally say, "I don't know," out loud. Not as a defeat, but as a release. You realize that knowing less isn't losing ground. It might actually be the first step into a different kind of wisdom. The kind that isn't about having the right answer, but about no longer needing to carry the weight of having one. There's a woman I heard about, someone who spent decades trying to figure out the right path for her career, her family, her choices. And one morning, over a quiet cup of coffee, she just stopped. She let go of the map she'd been clutching. And instead of feeling lost, she felt lighter. Her step changed. Not because she found a better route, but because she stopped pretending she needed one. That's what unlearning looks like. It's not a subtraction. It's a clearing. And in that clearing, something new has room to grow. And that's the quiet strength you carry now. Saying, "I don't know," isn't a surrender. It's the honesty of someone who has lived long enough to know that not everything needs an answer right away. You've spent decades learning. Now you get to unlearn the pressure to have it all figured out. There's a freedom in that pause, a wisdom that doesn't rush to fill the silence, because you've seen enough to trust that life unfolds even when you can't see the next step. That trust, that's not weakness. That's the deepest kind of knowing. You still have that power. It's been there all along, waiting for you to put down the weight of certainty. If this moment of peace settled something in you, if it felt like a breath you didn't know you were holding, then let this be a place you return to. Subscribe. There's more on the way.